Hey, welcome everybody. We're in the middle of a training right now, coaching, and this is going to be super simple this week because we're going to move on to our coaching groups pretty quick. But we're talking about casting vision and training believers, and we're combining those sales and just looking at that biblical principle together. We've tried to have multiple voices and interview different people who are on this journey. And so today I've asked Russ to join me. Russ Richmond and I just finished a training with a group of people. And so, since we're talking about training, we just trained together. And we're talking just for a couple of minutes today about sticking to the script, why it's important to keep it simple and duplicatable. So, Russ, welcome. You may have to be unmuted by Susie or Chris. Not sure there. I forgot about that one.
Yep.
So, Russ.
Yeah. Susie, if you want to make him, I'm not able to, but go ahead, Brent.
So Russ, whenever you get unmuted there, first of all, welcome and thanks for doing this. And my first question for you is, why is it important to keep the training simple and duplicatable?
Yeah. Hey, it's been awesome to do this training with Brent and work together. I think the reason why simplicity is so important is because of that, being able to, multiply, be able to do it. And I'm being a pastor for 22 years before I left and launched out and doing DMM, I loved being in the seat and being called the pastor and people feeling like they couldn't do it without me there. But the fact of trying, like right from the beginning, trying to say, hey, this is simple. I have this PDF. I'll pass it to you. Then you could pass it to somebody else. I think that's the real key point. There's a couple other, I think, important things to be warned about when we want to get creative. Because if you're been in ministry for a long time, you tend to like to get creative. You tend to like to put your own spin on stuff, which I totally do. I'm a creative type, but I think there's quite a few different reasons why you don't want to do that. I mean, or be careful with that.
Yeah, so my second question goes right along with that, Russ. So what happens when you spruce up the training with bells and whistles? Because you and I have both done that and made that mistake. But what happens? What would you say we need to be careful about?
Kind of like a quick story. So I was a worship pastor. And so I was the one who always says to people, like some of you, and especially if you're a missionary, you ever heard a pastor say, can you keep all that to 3 minutes, 4 minutes, And now that I'm on the other side, I'm getting that back. And so I deserve it. So I don't know how many decades I'll need to squeeze my whole life story into 4 minutes. But, and we went on a trip with them and we were friends with them. And so he was going to come visit our church. And so here's me, classic legacy pastor. I'm like, hey, we're going to want to do this DMM night. Can you do it in like 2 hours, And some people, maybe they could integrate DBS into their small group or something like that, just that classic trying to cram this really new way of, this new revolutionary way of thinking about stuff into like a little small thing. And I didn't realize then how I needed so much reworking and how I was training people, because I think that was my tendency, was actually to always try to squeeze things down, always try to make Christianity simple, easy. So, lowering the bar so more people can come, like, come on, anyone can do this. It's not hard. It's not, you can do it. And so that's kind of where I've, like, the bells and whistles I added was always trying to make things simpler and easier and the F word, fun, make everything fun. Right. So anyway, so I think what problem is it doesn't challenge us to make the changes we need to make to be a disciple maker. So when we're squeezing everything in to our already information-based discipleship thing, we're not saying, hey, you've got to actually make a shift. This training is about shifting your life. And I was thinking of the metaphor. I have a Suburban 4x4 Suburban, and it's pretty nice because I could be driving down the road and actually push on the dashboard, 4x4, 4-wheel drive, and it shifts automatically. But in the old school 4x4, you had to like stop your car, you had to get out, you had to wheel lock it, and then you get back in and you make this, you have to go backwards and then forwards and make sure all the hubs are locked in. And I think that's a appropriate metaphor for what we're really doing when we're calling people to be disciple makers. And this is, I'll quote Chris Galanos from our manifesto book. The last chapter, oh, it's so good in that book, where he says, you got to stop what you're doing. You got to clear space, and you got to do something new, because if you keep doing what you've been doing, you always get what you've been getting. And so you've probably seen it like I've seen it. People want to take this new thing that they hear us doing, and they want to put it in the old paradigms. They want to squeeze it into a little program that they put on the side of stuff. And we're saying, no, this is something of us shifting into a new gear. What's cool is we're all 4x4s. Like, God has made his church to be 4x4. Like, we can go off roads and we can like make disciples and start churches, but we've got to get out the freeway, and we got to lock it into 4x, and we got to drive off the road. So when we say, hey, it's 8 weeks, people are like, oh, can we do it shorter? Or can you give me the cliff notes? And it's like, no, this is really like, you need to kind of like, 8 weeks is short. And maybe we'll do 8 weeks, and all you'll do is you'll learn the 1-1-1, like this is a reworking of the basics to where, so anyway, I'm kind of going off and preaching, but that's probably, that's the thing. There's other reasons, but I think that shift, the need of a shift, it's more than downloading information. It's shifting the way we're doing our Christian walk and how we're doing ministry.
I think we're all going to use the 4x4 analogy now in our training from now on. Let me ask you this question, Russ. When you made the training more complex or creative, did it make the training more effective?
No, I went back to it. I called Jim Britz because I heard he had a 6-week training, and I was like, right on, let's do 6 weeks. And because it's shorter. And I appreciate Jim, man. And I have his, some of the changes they made. And I think that's awesome. But I went, and then when I was training with my son, who he always can do stuff better than dad. Right. Like, so he's like, no, we need to put that ball illustration, the game, we should play that. And that should be in lesson 1, because that's really, and I always felt like, I don't want to play some stupid game. Like, let's just tell them the point, why are we wasting this time with the game? But yeah, so I tried to do these creative things, and I just went back to the 8-week because I think it was like, it's not like it's inspired or whatever, but it helped communicate with other people who are doing the training. Like, because we say, hey, it's on this lesson or it's on that lesson. And sometimes we're like, oh, this sale, some people have said, oh, this sale should be renamed to that. And maybe, I don't know, but I mean, if you change the lingo, then you're going to start having to translate it as you talk to more workers and stuff. And I think it's nice that we kind of have some of the same lingo. It helps us collaborate better.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to share on this topic before I just share a couple quick points, and then we're going to go to coaching groups?
I think I kind of hit that. I appreciate it. I think we're doing a DBS today in John 15, and Jesus says, whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And I was thinking of, he didn't say apart from me, you can try nothing. Because we can get really, really busy doing all these things. And I think that's what we do a lot. And I feel the tendency, even though I've been doing this for a couple of years, I still see that pull like towards like multiplying ministry and busying my life and getting complex in the way I use my time. is that the more we can try stuff, but that doesn't mean it's going to work. You know what I mean? Like we can get busy, but that doesn't mean it's going to bear any more fruit. And that's so hard for us to accept, that we are completely dependent on our abiding with Christ and on him bringing us fruit, and not on us just like, oh man, I got this new hack. I got this new shortcut. I got this new way to multiply things my own way. And so I think the idea of simplicity is really huge. Simplicity doesn't mean easy. Like simple isn't easy, but it's the fact that there's these basic steps. And I'll just share this one last thing is, we were trying to integrate this, introduce people into it. And so we started these things called DMM Go groups. They're like an 8-week. So we advertise them like an 8-week experience of being in a missional community. And I said, okay, you got to do this one-on-one challenge, and we're going to go through the training, and we're going to have dinner, and we're going to do all this stuff. And then I realized towards the end of the 8 weeks, like some of my people weren't even having good quiet times yet, you know? And so it really convicted me that I need to really slow down and coach people in getting all the basics right. You can't move forward until you've got the basics. So that's why simplicity is important.
It's good. Thanks for sharing, Ross. Really appreciate your perspective. I put, just for clarity, just to save time, because you guys are able to copy and paste, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but some principles of simplicity and duplication that I think are helpful to think through, things like accessibility, consistency, and you guys can look through. So I'd encourage you to copy and paste that. The only other thing that I wanted to share is how important it is to look down on a regular basis in what we're doing in our DMM efforts and say, is what I'm doing still simple? Is it still duplicatable? Or have I made it complex in any way? And I think that applies to every sale, not just casting vision and training believers. And if there's one thing that I would want to highlight in the training process, it's the importance of not overlooking the simplicity of obedience. To not even go on to the next lesson if the majority of the people that you're training didn't take the next step of obedience. It doesn't have to be a huge step. It doesn't have to be a perfect step, because God has lots of work to do in our lives. But I would just encourage you to not feel like you just got to keep, we're going to do 8 weeks consecutively. I think it'd be better to take 2 or 3 weeks on a principle that's not being obeyed and learn how to obey it than just plow through, 8 principles. And I think the fruit that you'll experience long-term will reap a great reward if we focus on obedience, because even Jesus said, if you love me, you will obey my commands. And I think that that's such a huge, my mistake that I made at the beginning is I did not emphasize obedience enough. And the people who went through the training, I did a disservice to them because I let it be driven by the content. And now when we train, it is a whole lot more about helping people, coaching people, shepherding people through taking steps of obedience. And the fruit from that, the experience that people are having from that, is far greater and far more effective and has a much greater impact on their life, and quite frankly, my life too, as we walk that journey out. So don't feel like you have to plow through 8 weeks. Keep it simple, focus on obedience. And we're going to head into the coaching group so that we can keep it simple today and give you plenty of time there.